I haven't. This is exactly to reinforce my point. I haven't exactly figured out what I have to offer, right? What people want to hear from me. What,
But maybe you
if
have,
anything at all? If maybe I have nothing
maybe
to
what you
offer.
have to offer is the humble questions of someone who's wants to learn from others.
Mhm. Yep.
You understand what I mean? Like maybe that's what you have to offer as a podcaster.
Sure.
If you, like for example, one of the things I had to learn right away when my podcast started, I had to get out of my ego, and I had to realize that um, these people that are listening to this show, these are my colleagues. They're not my fans. They would be revolted if I called them my fans.
Yeah.
You understand what I mean? Like Colligan's got fans. Now there are some people that call themselves fans.
Of the show.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, but I don't call them fans. So, but most people that listen, they're my colleagues. They're my friends. I know them. A lot of them I've met many times. And, they've gone on this journey with me. I'm quite honored to have them on board.
Mm-hmm.
You understand what I mean? And I think that I'm not sure that you have anything to offer in the podcasting format to teach anybody about anything.
Mm-hmm.
Let's Get This Podcast Started is a production of Get a Grip Studios. Go to getagripstudios.com. Welcome back to Get a Grip Studios here in Toronto, Ontario, Canada, and we're starting the Get a Grip on Podcasting podcast, and we've recorded a whole bunch of episodes. You may have been confused about the name because we didn't even know what we were going to call it when we started it. But this podcast is for people that have started podcasts with us and their experience, and then new people that are starting a podcast. They want to start a podcast and their experiences at startup. So go to getagripstudios.com. Register if you want to do the Get a Grip on Podcasting or How to Start a Podcast. We haven't even named it yet, but welcome to the show, my son, John Paul Colligan.
Hey, Dad. Thanks for having me.
No problem. You have been talking about this influencer piece, and you have been talking about interviewing other influencers on a podcast. Unpack that for us for a bit.
Well, I'll start off by saying that I haven't actually listened or watched any of the other How to Start a Podcast episodes that you've recorded. So I'm excited to be a part of this. But to unpack my idea, I would say I've always been, for the last few years, I've taken quite an interest in health and fitness and nutrition, and I wouldn't say necessarily it's a passion for me, but I think I have something to share. I think I have a perspective that people would, resonate with. I'd like to enter or start a platform where, I could sort of get my voice out there, start talking to people about it.
So right now you're posting 1 or 2 minute videos of what you eat and how you work out and your lifestyle onto Instagram. How's that been going?
I think it's picked up quicker than I thought it would.
Okay.
Yeah. Especially because I integrated my amateur Muay Thai fighting career and the fact that I'm also working a full-time job during my fight camps. I think it's actually inspired quite a few people. I've been receiving DMs about how about people's inspiration and how they're starting to see the simplicity and in just improving your life and your nutrition.
So correct me if I'm wrong. So working and working out is inspirational to people?
I think there's a lot of people who haven't.
You got to grow up out there.
Yeah.
You get a job and work, and then you work out before work or after work.
Yeah. Well, we were talking about it the other day. People are given less and less, not people, children, throughout maybe, the decades or generations have been taken responsibility or having their responsibilities taken away from them. They're given less and less freedom. They're not necessarily allowed to determine their own path, and they're unsure, whether or not they should try to be creative, or
You're
try.
talking about the adult-adolescent phenomenon.
Yeah, yeah. Extended adolescence.
Extended adolescence.
Extended adolescence, yeah. And so when I don't want to toot my own horn, but when they see a guy out there who's fighting, which I think is, I do it because I think it's badass. I don't have a passion for fighting. I don't want to be in one championship or UFC, but I think it's badass, quite frankly. And
every man should know how to fight.
Absolutely, whether or not you want to compete or you should learn how to fight. Yeah, absolutely.
And if you don't know how to throw a punch,
that's a problem.
Yeah, I think every man should know how to throw a punch.
Yeah, I mean, what are the odds you're going to have to brawl with someone in the street? It's very unlikely. However, would you rather be a gardener in a war or a warrior in a garden? That's the common saying. And so
I'd rather be a gardener in a war.
You'd rather be a gardener?
Yeah, I don't want to be on the front lines.
Yeah, okay, that's fair.
I'd rather be the gardener, but yeah, sure.
But anyways, yeah, to shifting gears back to what we were originally talking about. When people scroll their Instagram and they see someone that's likely, close to their age, 19 years old, who has multiple fights and is taking care of his nutrition and working a full-time job all at the same time, I think that people are inspired by that, because you're seeing it less and less. People are being funneled into university, like directly out of high school. They're not learning anything in high school. I didn't learn anything in high school. I'm not any more intelligent than I was when I entered grade 9
because of high school.
Yeah, really everything I learned, all of the maturity that I gained was from outside of high school, right? And I said it time and time again. This is holding me back. In late grade 11, early grade 12, going into my graduation, I knew high school was holding me back. And the last thing I wanted to do was extend my adolescence for an extra 4 years to get a bachelor's degree so I can, what are you going to do with that?
Well, there's nothing wrong with education specifically, as long as you're looking at it from a return on investment perspective. And your grades were so spectacular that you couldn't get into any university anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
But let's talk for a minute about your high school experience here. And people, if they're listening to this, you may recall there was a recent shutdown of our whole society. And this happened when the young man was in grade 9. And he spent his entire grade 10 year doing what, son? What did you do for all of grade 10?
Pretty hard labor.
Yeah.
Pretty hard labor, yeah. Yeah, across a few different trades. It was full-time, 4 days a week, I would say, because I was dabbling in high school. I had ILC.
Yeah, sure.
I was dabbling in some credits. So on Fridays, I would focus on doing ILC, which was a online learning experience where you would essentially get your credits at your own pace. But for the majority of grade 10, grade 11, grade 11, I was working in like end stage renovation, mostly framing and carpentry, some demolition, a lot of demolition, and then I also did some work part-time for your lighting contracting business. Yeah.
So in grade 10, you're working in the trades. So and that started off during your grade 10 gym class, online yoga.
Yeah, so that was a blast.
I walked into your bedroom during the pandemic and I saw this guy in the downward dog on his screen, and JP was playing PlayStation, and I said, "What's this?" He goes, "This is grade 10 gym." So I said, "This is over," and then we put him on the construction site in grade 10. And then you worked in an auto mechanic shop and for my electrical contracting business here, and you did all trades until basically grade 12.
Yeah. Yeah.
So maybe your perspective on school is not everybody else's.
It's unique.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I don't want to devalue education. I think education is great. I think people should look at the payback of the education they're receiving. So you're saying that in 2024, a person that is 19 that has a full-time job, works out, and eats right is an inspiration?
Comparatively, yes. I think, yeah. It's unique, like we just said, and too many people are being funneled out of high school into university, to put it simply.
So when I was your age, working full-time and working out and having a funny diet, a guy would have been considered weird if he didn't eat bread, for example. He's doing that Atkins thing,
yeah,
or whatever. But if he looked good and he worked, that was normal. Now it's special.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you want to talk about this on a podcast, or is your podcast going to be about a broader topic?
I'm not sure what exactly it will boil down to. After I start putting content out there, I'll see what people resonate with and see what they want to see more of. But quite frankly, I don't think there are enough um, young males, taking initiative, with taking their lives into their own control, and and you know, um, not even going out on social media and advertising it. Just in general, there aren't enough 18, 19-year-old boys that are really considering how those years of their lives are going to affect their adulthood, because it's not like these years aren't necessarily meant for partying and having fun.
Why not?
Well, that's I think it's a common misconception that you should, because you're young, you should take the time to just essentially waste it and then figure out
I do think there's a lot of people. So I just want to break down this audience that you're talking about. Okay. Is your audience going to be, because I'm not sure this podcast idea is totally clear to me. Is your audience going to be young men that are struggling, overweight, not working, and not working out? Or is your audience going to be other guys like you that are young men, they're working hard, maybe they're getting an engineering degree, but they're working out and they have a side hustle? Maybe they're, they're already out there working in sales like you, and they like the boxing, or they like what a karate, whatever. Who's the audience?
That's a very good question. I haven't quite figured that out yet, but that's really why I'm dabbling in being an influencer in the first place. Why I sort of started putting my life out there.
The people that like your stuff, what are they like?
It's a wide range of people. I get a lot of positivity and a lot of negativity on my posts.
So who gives you the positivity?
The young men who, well, it's tough because most of them are anonymous profiles, so I don't necessarily get to see like who exactly they are. But my assumption is that they're young guys who are inspired, and they say, "Hey, great content. Like you make it seem really simple. I've started eating ground beef every day. Like little things like that." People are clearly inspired, and then the ones that are definitely like sharing their negative thoughts are just, I think people that just want to express negativity online. I don't know.
Some people have bad intentions.
There isn't really a pattern
envy.
or a trend with them. There's no clear pattern with the people who say, oh, I don't know, just negativity in general.
Just because someone lashes out at you doesn't mean you didn't impact them.
Sure.
Sometimes negativity is like a good sign. Depends on what you're doing. So so you have people out there, you got negative reviews, you got positive reviews on your social media. Who's going to listen to a 45-minute podcast?
That's a good question. I'm not sure whether or not it will be a long,
I don't think that kind of content. Yeah. Like what is it that, let me to change gears.
Yeah.
My son and I listen to a lot of the same podcasts. So there's one of our favorite podcasters always says shifting gears or transitioning away from something. So we've begun using it ourselves in conversation. So switching gears, what is it that when you're thinking about this, you've talked to me about how you're an inspiration to people. I'm your dad. I think that's funny, but maybe you are. Okay. We've talked about that. You're definitely an inspiration to me. Let me tell you that. Okay. Like I think you're awesome, and I think your life's going really well, and I'm really proud of you. But I'm not sure that play works in a podcast. So
it might not be the right platform. Might not be the right.
Yeah, I don't think people are going to listen to a 45 minutes of eating right, or talking about eating, or talking about working out, or fighting. Yeah. Maybe they would do fighting. I don't know. A lot of fighting shows out there. The podcast is kind of that area is kind of swamped. The lifestyle area is swamped. What is it that you want to learn on this journey? Forget about who's listening. What is it on this, if you go on this podcast journey,
that I want to learn? Okay.
What is it that you want to learn about? What is it that you have to learn? Forget about how are you going to be inspired?
I think that the more that I get my content out there, the more I'll realize I want to learn what I have to offer. Okay, yeah. I I think it would be valuable for me to learn what I have to offer as an influencer, what people would like to be, because people will naturally, they'll tell me what they're inspired by. They will, through their comments and through what gets views, what hits the slipstream, or the that the algorithm, what
Mm.
gets into the slipstream and blows up. Um, but I think that I just, like I said at the beginning, I think I have something to offer, and I'm willing to put some time and effort into figuring out what that is.
Need to check with an expert before you start recording? Get a Grip Studios offers consultation services. Visit getagripstudios.com for more.
I think the people you interview on your podcast, if you do it right, have way more to offer you than you have to offer anyone else.
Are you relating that to what you said earlier with, is my viewership going to be people who are very similar to me, or the people that would like necessarily to be similar to me?
What is it that you want to learn? Like, for example, when I started the first podcast, I started Get a Grip on Lighting. I wanted to be able to learn and talk to the major people in the lighting industry about issues in the lighting industry. And I approached that not with having anything to teach them, but I approached that with a sense of wanting to learn what it is that they had to offer. And I found that when I asked people for advice, that they gave it to me, and they were forthcoming and honest, and I learned a lot. And so on my podcast journey, over 500 episodes or six, I don't know how many podcasts I've recorded now. Scott, the producer, probably doesn't even know. We did a list, but it's out there somewhere. So maybe 700, 800 podcasts, something like that, fully sponsored. Okay. Listened to by between 600 and 2,500 people in the lighting industry every episode. And that journey was not about me teaching anybody anything. That journey was about me learning and meeting good people and talking to them and taking and exchanging information. That doesn't mean nobody learns anything from me on the podcast, but what my listeners enjoy. And I always say, I don't have fans. I have colleagues that don't do podcasts. I always say that. And that has been at the core of the success, is people watching my journey of learning the ins and outs of the lighting industry. Get a Grip on Lighting. Go to getagriponlighting.com. But, I haven't heard you express anything about your journey. What do you have to learn?
What I have to offer. What as an influencer, what people would like to take away from my experiences.
What about people that are good at influencing, and they could give you some tips and tricks about what works and what doesn't work?
Yeah, I think I would like to.
Like, do you think there are people that are better influencers than you?
No doubt, of course. People
Right?
that are better.
And what if somebody that had like 100,000 followers on Instagram decided to take a flyer on and do a podcast with you? Wouldn't that be an experience where you could ask that person significantly cool questions? They're not going to give you their trade secrets, but they might give you some best practices.
As an influencer.
As an influencer. Like somebody that has a huge group of people that consistently follow, like, repost, share their content. You don't think other people that want to be influencers might find that podcast interesting?
Yeah, well, now we're discussing the possibility of gaining a following or a viewership of people who also want to be influencers, not necessarily people who want to just improve their lives.
Now, do you think that
it would be interesting if I could find a way to integrate those two things together, right? Take my experience and my lifestyle, optimal health, as I call it, and then integrating that with becoming an influencer. What do you think of Andrew Tate?
What do I think of Andrew Tate?
Yeah.
I don't think much about Andrew Tate.
What are your thoughts on him? Because I know you've obviously heard of him.
I see a degenerate womanizer. That's my thought for him. If somebody were to ask me to characterize him, I don't know the man. I never met him. But from what I've heard, I haven't looked into it. But my impression in the public is that that's what he is. I don't know if it's true or not. If you haven't up listening to this, Mr. Tate, no hard feelings, please. But that's just the impression I have. I don't think about you that much, though.
So it wouldn't, no matter what your opinion of Andrew Tate is, to me, it's not gonna hurt my feelings or whatever. But and I stopped taking an influence from him probably like a year and a half,
Mm-hmm.
2 years ago.
Okay.
But I'll be honest, like I was definitely, he definitely had a positive influence on my life,
Okay.
right? And I think he did to millions of other young men, who have, as a consequence, started like taking back their lives, taking back control, and started going to the gym, just doing little positive things, to improve, like being intentional about their lives, walking through their day, like how can I make this day a net positive?
Right. So if Andrew Tate was a guest on your podcast, what would you ask him?
I don't really care about Andrew Tate.
I just asked you a question, though. Andrew, if you could get Andrew Tate to come on your podcast, it would be a full-blown heist.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So like him, love him, doesn't matter. You're going to get tons of views if you get Andrew Tate on your podcast. And it would probably be the most popular if you argued with him. But
Sure.
And politely in a debating format rather than these people screaming at each other. I'm not interested in that at all. But if he came on your podcast, would you influence him or would he influence you?
Would I influence him or would he influence me?
Who's the big and who's the little? The answer to
Define
that
that for me.
question
What
is
do you-
Andrew Tate's the big and you're
Yeah.
the little because you're talking about influencing. He's
I was
probably one
influenced
of the
by him.
he's one of the top 10 influencers in the world.
Yeah, I think he was number one, like whatever he wants
Right,
to call himself.
whatever.
Googled
We're
man on
not
the internet.
talking. We're talking technically here. We're not
Yeah,
talking
yeah.
about Andrew Tate specifically. Another guy, Jordan Peterson, would be a guy that I would know as an influencer.
Yeah.
Ben Shapiro is another one of these clowns. That are in the Tate category. You
Sure.
know what I mean? Of kind of clown town, in my opinion. But there are positive and negative people out there. But if he comes on a podcast where you're learning about influencing young men, that's my camera. Your camera's there or up there.
Yeah.
If he's coming on a podcast with you, that's a great honor for you.
Yeah.
Not because you maybe you're an acolyte of his or a member of the Andrew Tate cult. In fact, the outcome of becoming a better man is that you don't join any cults. You're just your own man, right? Like that's the outcome of it, right? And so that's
you're
what
not
happened.
codependent with Andrew Tate.
Exactly.
Yeah, if he was assassinated, it wouldn't be the worst.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah, that's exactly.
So the outcome being that. But you're saying that you can't think of one question that you'd want to ask him if he came on your show?
Oh, I mean, I could probably write down a list of questions I'd like to ask him.
What's
yeah.
the first one that pops to your head right now? You want to be a podcaster?
Sure.
Let's go. What's the first one that pops into your head?
Okay, well, if I had to ask a question to Andrew Tate, I would say, I don't know. I mean, where do you start? Like, there's not a lot of there's not a lot of backstory on Andrew Tate. It's just he goes from kickboxer to most Googled man on the internet. So what was his experience like as a youngin, as like an adolescent? Like, where did it click for him?
Okay.
At what age? For me, it was probably 18 or I'm not going to dive into it, but for me, it was Andrew Tate and the carnivore diet at around 18 years old. Those were like, that was it for me. That was the turning point in my life.
And
So
that's when you started smoking cigars.
I'd like to I'd like to compare and contrast my adolescence to his.
Okay.
I think that'd be a good question. Like, where did it click for him?
Okay. Why wouldn't you ask him the obvious question?
What is the obvious question?
Like, how did you get to be the most Googled man on the internet?
No,
That's an obvious question.
Okay.
Like, isn't that what the influencers all crave?
I think that's what he talks about day in and day out. I think that's his main topic is how great am I?
Yeah.
I think he has a platform.
He appeals to people's vanity. That's for sure. Vain people like other vain people. It's like two peas in a pod, right?
Yeah.
So if you're vain and you're a womanizer, and you probably get a kick out of Andrew Tate. Maybe he's got some witticisms, or he's got some big liners that make you go, wow, that's kind of neat to think of things that way, or to look at things from his perspective. He's obviously very intelligent. Okay, he's obviously has a genius IQ. There's no way he got to where he is without that.
Sure. Yeah.
That doesn't make him. Has nothing to do with morality.
Yeah. There's you could take away a wide variety of things from his content. You could
What if he asked him though?
if I asked him.
Yeah. What if you said, "What was it, Andrew? You're super popular, Mr. Tate, whatever he goes by, right?" Say, "Hey, listen, man. What I really want to know in 2024, what's different about how you came up to become an influencer, and now, what's the major thing that's changed? What do you think a young guy coming up should do to, to really start to gain a following?" He might tell you. You understand what I mean? He might tell you. I would tell you.
Yeah. You're bringing it back to this idea of of becoming an influencer, right? So I think I haven't. This is exactly to reinforce my point. I haven't exactly figured out what I have to offer, right? What people want to hear from me. What
But maybe
if
you have. Maybe
anything
you
at
have.
all? If
Maybe
I have
what.
nothing
Maybe
to
what you
offer.
have to offer is the humble questions of someone who's wants to learn from others.
Mhm. Yep.
You understand what I mean? Like maybe that's what you have to offer as a podcaster.
Sure.
If you, like for example, one of the things I had to learn right away when my podcast started, I had to get out of my ego, and I had to realize that these people that are listening to this show, these are my colleagues. They're not my fans. They would be revolted if I called them my fans.
Yeah.
You understand what I mean? Like Colligan's got fans. Now there are some people that call themselves fans.
Of the show.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't call them fans. So, but most people that listen, they're my colleagues. They're my friends. I know them. A lot of them I've met many times. And, they've gone on this journey with me. I'm quite honored to have them on board.
Mm-hmm.
You understand what I mean? And I think that I'm not sure that you have anything to offer in the podcasting format to teach anybody about anything.
Mm-hmm. That's fair.
I think that, Instagram, sure. You're putting out a 1-minute video on eating ground beef or whatever, walking your dog, working out, going selling Subarus and all that kind of stuff. People are like, wow, that's kind of neat. Like, next. But if you want to engage somebody in a conversation on a consistent basis and have them listen to it, I think you got to take the opposite perspective. Right? You got to wash the feet. Just like Christ. If you're going to go on this journey.
That's why I'm
and
on
build
How to Be a Podcaster.
Yeah, now you're learning big time, buddy. And welcome to the show. All you folks out there, if you want to do this as well, it's only $49. Sit down and talk to me about a successful podcaster. I don't mean to brag.
How to start a podcast.
But you know what? How many? I'm looking at Scott. How many podcasts? We produce so many podcasts, and all of them are monetized. They all get paid for through advertising. I know how to do this.
Out of everyone who comes through this, who's most out of all the people who funnel in and out of this podcast studio, who's most qualified to say how to start a podcast?
Me.
There you go. Yeah.
Right, and then Greg would be a distant second. And then the difference between me and the other paid podcasters on our network is that Greg and I are executive producers of other podcasts. So not only do we have our own podcast where we get paid, but we've also created other podcasters that get paid.
I'm gonna take advantage of you then. I'm gonna.
Okay.
Here's a good question that I have for you because I'm not sure. Throughout my journey of I think I'm on day 130, 131 or 132 now of what I eat in a day, and I have just the day in the caption. But throughout the experience, I've learned what people like to a small degree, what people like to see from my videos, and what they don't sort of gravitate to. When my views drop, when they go up. So, do you have any advice for me on how to navigate? Or if possible, how to sort of expedite that process of like seeing what people want to take away from your content, like what exactly, how to find out what you have to offer?
I have no idea how Instagram works.
Okay.
So I'm not going to say anything about Instagram. But what I'll tell you is that the Instagram Reels and podcasting are two totally different mediums that from the outside seem very similar, but actually have nothing to do with anything. Nobody wants to sit through a podcast for 45 minutes where some guy brags about what he eats. Now, there's a few top guys out there maybe that can get away with that. But what you're going to notice is that they probably, if they're into the health and lifestyle atmosphere, they've probably incorporated God or spirituality or yoga or gratitude, some sort of gratitude mechanism that they've included into it so people don't puke.
Yeah. So I think
You understand what I'm talking about?
I do. My content has to evolve for it to be something that people would care to watch in any long form.
The purpose
style.
of Instagram is to inflate people's vanity. That's the purpose of the medium.
Yeah,
and so people will watch a 1-minute video on eating ground beef and getting shredded like you. And
it's
fighting.
Short form.
Exactly. It's meant to appeal to their vanity. The podcast that will be antithetical to a successful podcast.
Yeah, I think podcasts are to maybe, I don't know whether it's a small or a large degree, for people who are a little bit more serious about learning from the creator that they're watching, because they're putting in more of a commitment into watching their content.
Mm-hmm.
If someone were to listen, if I were to release a 45-minute episode of what I eat in a day versus a 35-second Instagram reel, the people that were to watch it on Instagram are definitely not as committed as the people who would take it to YouTube and watch 45 minutes of it, right? They truly believe that I have something to offer them. I don't think my content would perform very well in a long form unless I evolved it, right? Like you said, integrate something else into it, like God or or
no. I think that you're in the wrong position if you want to be a podcaster. So what I'm advocating for you is to in a long form. Scott, the producer in there, is constantly reminding me when I've repeated myself, when I've gone too far down some conspiratorial rabbit hole, when a guest has, and everyone's looking at Scott, and he says, hey, you know what? This little bit's weird. Maybe you should stop using the phrase axiomatic presupposition. You sounded smart the first time you used it. Now it sounds like it's the only smart word you have in your vocabulary, right? And so what happens is I think you need to take the opposite position and say this podcast journey is about me learning, not me teaching. And if you have the honor of interviewing, somebody gives you 45 minutes of their time, it's about what they have to say, because you're going to run out of content on half an hour, 45-minute podcast like that.
Yeah.
You're going to run out in 5 episodes.
For sure. Yeah.
So the question really for you to have to ask yourself is, and I've asked this so many times of people, do you want to be a podcast host or do you want to be a podcast guest?
I think I have more to offer if I was a host.
I think that's the wrong.
Or sorry, not necessarily offer, but I think
you would learn a lot if people honored you with their time.
Yeah, exactly.
And you could talk about influencing or whatever with them. Yes, I think you would learn a lot.
Not me myself offer into that show, but I think that I think there's more potential for me to take the greatness out of like a variety of people's stories and their experience and how they achieve their success, as opposed to me rambling about what I eat in a day for the 200th time in a 45-minute long YouTube episode.
Yeah, those are good. Those will be unwatchable.
Yeah, exactly. Like I've actually the more time that I've spent. Here's something: if there's any influencers out there that have less than 1,100 followers on Instagram, okay, technically you're less qualified than I am, so I'll give you a little bit of advice. The more vague and broad you are, the more people will react to your content. Right? So if you get your point across to the people who want to learn, beautiful. But then if you leave it a little bit vague and let there be a little bit of like uncertainty with what your point is, and then people will react to it, they'll comment on it, and then and your video will probably hit the slipstream or the algorithm. But the people that truly want to, if you really have something to offer and you have some experience that people can resonate with, and you have something to teach anyone, if you put your voice out there and then let people take your points and come to their own conclusion, then you'll have more to offer, as opposed to, it's very boring when you watch a video and someone goes through a step-by-step process, like a YouTube reel. You're not there to watch someone do a step-by-step process of why exactly, for example, lifting weights is more optimal than cardio. If you go through each individual step and then come to your conclusion after a minute, everyone's going to skip that reel. However, if you let people come to their own conclusion in agreement with you, you'll have more of an effect.
So when I was a young man like you, I went to university, and it was a wonderful experience, actually. And in Canada, university, if you're in America and you're listening to this, Canada is not a bankruptcy thing when you go to university and you don't have the money to pay for it. You don't have to take out huge loans. It's more affordable up here.
Well, it is to a smaller degree.
Yeah,
much smaller.
Yeah,
degree.
it's not a big deal. So the point being, though, is that I went to university and I got a lot out of it, and I know exactly what you're talking about. There's a literary term for what you're talking about. Okay, and it was coined by a poet named John Keats. I learned this in university.
Okay.
And in a letter to his friend, he talked about something called negative capability. And that's the term, the literary term is negative capability. And what it means is the ability to avoid the loathsome and annoying tendency to draw conclusions all the time.
Yeah.
And to solve the problem.
Yeah.
And so if his poem had negative capability, people have been talking about John Keats's poems in every English-speaking university in every country in the world since he died. You know why? Because he didn't give the answer.
It's an ego boost to watch someone else's, like someone that's more qualified than you. It's an ego boost to yourself to watch their content and come to your own conclusion that, is a net positive to you. Right? As opposed to them laying out in exact terms and defining their argument for you. If they just give you little snippets and little details and you come to the same conclusion as them, it's more valuable because now you've learned something. You've used your intellect.
Turn your plans into a pilot. Visit getagripstudios.com or call 416-492-5835 for more information.
Well, so when you're reading poetry, which is an art form, just like doing your Instagram videos is an art form, and doing podcasts is an art form. When you're looking at an art form and you're analyzing it for negative capability, anything out there that has certainty in it or forces a prescription on somebody will not be popular. People want to take what they want and leave the rest. Okay? They want Ode on Aggression Earned by John Keats to mean what they want it to mean.
They want to reinforce their...
Exactly.
Their current...
Right? And the best art universally reinforces everybody's ideas that are good or bad, depending on whether the art form is a good art form or a bad art form.
Like a universal truth?
Yes. Actually, the end of the Aggression Earned is, beauty is truth and truth is beauty. That's all ye know on earth and all ye need to know. That's the last couple lines of the poem. And this poem has been discussed ad nauseum and what it means, what it's about, everything else, but it's filled with negative capability. So on your journey, on your podcast, why not fill your podcast with negative capability and allow your guests to bring unique perspectives every single time, but with the basis being that you are going to ask them your questions earnestly and honestly in order to improve whatever the hell it is you want to do.
You know who should go on the How to Be a Podcast?
Who should go on it?
Joe Rogan.
To come on my podcast?
Yeah.
Why?
So he can learn how to shut up and let his guests
God,
talk.
yeah. Another one of those guys is Jordan Peterson. God.
Yeah.
The guy's...
We've heard enough of Jordan Peterson.
The guy has become completely unlistenable.
Yeah.
Now he's doing monologues. Oh my God. Monologues? Buddy, I don't want to be told what to do by you anymore. No negative capability. He went off the rails.
He's like his own guest.
Yeah.
He's interviewing himself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Egotistical narcissist. What are you going to do? He became that way, though. He wasn't that way when he started.
But I have to say, I definitely matured a lot through like listening to his earlier work.
Oh, it's great.
Yeah. Yeah.
His earlier where his series on Genesis is. I went to see him in person. I used to go see. Did I take you? I took you once to see him.
Yep.
But I used to. I went.
That was
his
when he was on the
original-
tour. He was on the tour of
Uh,
book that he wrote. Yeah, the 10 Rules for Life.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
When he started dictating rules, that's when I kind of got a little bit the rules, buddy. But the when he was doing his biblical series,
Like
down
his
at
first
UFT,
10 episodes on Spotify.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I was at those.
Yeah. And no, you told me that. Yeah.
I went to
that's
those
awesome.
and I saw them live.
Mhm.
As they were being
Or
recorded.
that UFT.
At UFT, yeah.
Yeah.
There's a theater down there. He rented. It was $20. I bought the whole series, $150. But there was no ticket check. Everyone just walked in.
Right.
There was no tickets, no seating, nothing. If you bought, it was always less than the capacity. I could have gone for free, is what I'm saying, when it was early to Jordan Peterson. Now, anyway, enough about him. Where he went wrong, and where Joe Rogan is going wrong right now, in my humble opinion. When they both started, they had something to learn, and it was interesting to follow them on their journey. Now, Jordan Peterson has everything figured out. He tells you what's up all the time.
Yeah, he's the supreme adjudicator.
Yeah.
Yeah.
About what's right and what's wrong, and everything's so simple and clear cut and this and that. That's annoying. That's why his popularity is going down. Joe Rogan's kind of fallen into that camp now as well.
Yeah, it's like yes, yeah. He's falling into the camp, is a good way of putting it. He's not quite as far gone as Jordan Peterson. But Jordan Peterson, it's almost like he'll bring on a guest and then he'll tell his guest, he'll try to educate his guest on their
Jordan, if I have to hear you talk about Pinocchio and the meaning of the Pinocchio movie again, I can't listen to your podcast because I have to hear on every show about Pinocchio or about what the Book of Exodus
what
means
front
for
are
the
we on now, Jordan
17th.
Peterson?
Yeah.
What front are we on?
Yeah, we on a different front now. That we're on this front, that front. You know what I mean? It's just so but there you see the collapse of the art.
Mhm.
He's lost what was magical in the beginning.
Yeah.
And the key is to maintain that magic.
Yeah, he has a lot to offer.
Sure.
He's not like he's extremely intelligent.
He should be a podcast guest.
Sure. Yeah.
He should not be a podcast host.
Yeah, like create value through scarcity. We don't need to hear so much of you, you know?
Yeah, there you go. That's from the 48 Laws of Power.
Yeah.
Watch it. So, JP, you've been on the Get a Grip on Podcasting. I think we're going to call it Get a Grip on Podcasting.
That's a good name. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's on theme.
Because it's going to be like people that started a podcast with us or people that did this, because we're going to offer this to people. If they don't want to put it on the internet, it's $99 to do one of these consultations. If they want to put it on the internet, we're going to do it for $49. So it helps us build our brand and what we're doing here at Get a Grip Studios. But we recognize that not everybody's going to want to put it on the internet. Yeah. So what are you going to do?
What have I taken away? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah. What are you going to do?
Well, I think the next step would just be to start putting content out there, and I think.
Are you going to
I've
start a
definitely learned something
podcast?
from this
Are you
experience.
going to start a podcast?
Yeah, well, I've definitely learned something from this experience, and even if you don't, even if I take away nothing from what you've told me,
Mhm.
it's still a valuable experience for me to come on a podcast.
Oh, sure.
Because it's a little bit like it's nerve-wracking, even if 3 people watch this, even if only we watch it,
Yeah, sure.
right? The only people that view this episode are me and my dad. It's still nerve-wracking to sit in front of 3 cameras.
We had to put Scott Griffin through it. He's there. He's listening and watching because he's switching the cameras. But
Yeah, but it's a valuable experience just to be in front of cameras with someone who's used to being in front of cameras.
and also recording the conversation, hearing your voice in your own ears.
Yeah,
These things
exactly.
add to the experience. So this is why, folks, if you're listening, if you want to start a podcast with Get a Grip Studios, the first step is to record a podcast.
Yeah.
Okay.
You think you're like it's
You've
easy,
done your
it's
first
easy
podcast.
to imagine yourself being a guest on a podcast, and then you sit in the chair and and you have the microphone and you're in front of the camera, and now you have to speak.
Yeah.
What do I
And
say?
not only that, though,
Yeah.
you gotta get rid of your stonewalling, your defensiveness,
Mhm.
your contempt, and your criticism.
Yeah, open your mind.
No,
Yeah,
but
you have something to learn.
those are the 4 horses of the apocalypse in dialogue, in conversation:
Say them again.
defensiveness,
Mhm.
stonewalling, contempt, and criticism. So when you're engaging with dialogue with somebody else, when you're not being recorded, it's really easy to tell a twisting white lie
Right. Yeah.
to not allow the other person to make their point.
Mm-hmm.
You need to, it really hurt me when you did this. Well, you hurt me when you did that. And that's not what I did. Let's put my headset on and then we'll talk about it. We can record it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's a lot of tough talkers out there. Big talker.
That's
tough
a good point.
talker.
Yeah, I've never.
Right? You say big things.
That's completely eliminated in a podcast platform.
No, some people will still do it.
Well,
they don't care.
But it's yes, severely.
Yeah, they're just going to look like an idiot.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? So the podcasting, what I love about it.
It's almost like you want to take it outside. You want to take it to the studio.
Exactly.
Let's take it to the studio.
Yeah, you're a big talker.
Yeah.
Tough talker.
Oh, okay. Hold on a second.
Yeah, let's get the mics going. And we'll record it, folks. Like I said, the first step, $49. You can sit down with me or Scott Wachter, too. He's available. He's a good interviewer as well. You could sit down. We don't want to do it in studio all the time. I let my son come to the studio, but he was late by 1 minute. But some people are late by half an hour. And it's really annoying because the studio's got to go. We have to have a hard stop on this in a couple minutes because we have another show recording at 10:30. So it's easier to do it remotely. It's when you're virtual in the virtual studio, it's $49. If you want to come in and record with me in studio, it's $349. And if you want to keep the file to yourself, it's $99. So we're not forcing you to put it on our podcast, but you're gonna do a podcast. That's step number 1 with Get a Grip Studios. Check the box off. Let's go. Go to getagripstudios.com. My thanks go to Scott Wachter, of course, my business partner, but also Scott Griffin, the producer, who sits through all of these shows. There's always one person that listens. He listens to more podcasts than anybody else in the world, I guarantee you. Maybe not the world, but it's up there. He's in the top 1% of 1%. And I also like to say, John Paul, I'm very proud of you. I think you have a ton to learn, but you're on the right trajectory, buddy. And I think if you approach this with humility and pay your invoices on time, that you'll be able to start a good podcast. For the rest of you out there, thanks for listening. Let's Get This Podcast Started is a production of Get a Grip Studios. Do you want to start a podcast? Do you need help with your existing podcast? Do you want to record some conversations or a presentation? Do you want to be a guest on Let's Get This Podcast Started? Go to getagripstudios.com.